Welcome, everybody. My name is Chelsea, and I'm the communications lead at Kids and Company. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We are so excited to collaborate with certified parent coach Jenn Abbatiello. Jenn is the founder of Your Transformed Family and has over 9 years of experience and training. She's a graduate of the world's leading institute for parent coaching, the Jai Institute. As a certified parent coach, she guides families around the world to end the frustration, guilt, and chaos and find more peace, calm, and connection in their parenting. Today, Jenn will walk us through a simple 4-step proven process for cooperation that you can put into practice right away. If you have any questions throughout the session, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will ensure they get addressed at the end of the session. Over to you, Jenn.
Thanks, Kelsey. I am excited to be here today, and thank you for having me. I have crammed lots in this 1-hour session, so I'm going to jump right in. I know there's people probably just flowing through, but we are going to get started. So let me just share my screen. Everyone can see my screen. Maybe just pop in the chat. Yes, so I know we're seeing everything okay. Awesome. Lots of yeses, all good. Perfect. So as Kelsey said, I am here to talk to you today about a 4-step proven strategy on how to get your kids to cooperate. And then in addition to that, I'm also going to be sharing lots of strategies on how to use that 4-step process with practical examples. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a couple of moments, but if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat the ages of your kids, if you have more than one, and what your biggest struggle is in your parenting right now. I just want to get a sense of who we have here. So ages of your kids or age of your child, and what your biggest parenting struggle is at the moment. Cleaning up after themselves. Oh yeah. Everything is no. We are definitely going to touch on that, Celine. Okay, I'll keep watching as those come in. Getting ready to go anywhere, listening, no pattern power. Okay, these are all things we are going to touch on, and I am hopefully leaving enough room at the end for questions, but if not, there'll be a way for you to get in touch with me if there's any questions that you still have as we keep going. So what I would ask of you is, first of all, celebrate yourselves for coming and making this hour a priority. We have so many things that we could be doing, and there's so much demand for our time, but you showed up for this webinar, which tells me that you're really committed to try and do the best you can in your parenting. So I would ask if you'd be willing, I know it's probably the lunch hour, depending where you are in the world, but if you would put away your cell phone tablet, leave your messages and emails for after this webinar so that you can be 100% present with me. If you're eating your lunch, all good. But yeah, let's make the most of the time that we've had here. And though we pride ourselves on multitasking, there's actually research that shows, and I don't know how many of you know the Pomodoro app, which I love, that if you do one thing at a time for short periods of time, you actually end up being more productive in the long run versus trying to do 100 things at once. So I imagine that you are here because you're frustrated of having to ask your kids or kid over and over again before they do it. And then it becomes so frustrating and exhausting. And perhaps you're looking for a way to feel like you're doing a better job at this whole parenting thing. We get degrees, certifications, and training for so many things in life, and yet we pop out these little humans, and the feeling is it should be instinctual. And for many of us, if we had, positive role models growing up, it definitely is helpful, but it doesn't mean that parenting is easy. And so for me, and I'll share a bit more about my story, I really had to learn to parent in a different way that was aligned to what I wanted for my family and my kids. And so it could be really hard to figure out when there's so much confusion out there on what's the right way to approach some of the negative behaviors you're seeing. It's exhausting, right? Especially the past 2 years, and some of you with young kids, the pandemic has been the way you've been living. And depending where you are in the world, that might have removed a lot of the in-person supports that you would have otherwise had. So parenting is hard in regular times, but definitely the past 2 years have added some extra challenges. So you are not alone if you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and not sure how to approach what's going on in your home. You're in the right place if you are nodding yes to any of these statements. And trust me, I have been there. They're not listening, they're not cooperating. If you have more than one, it might be feeling like you're the policeman in between the two. And you might find yourself behaving in ways that you're not so proud of. Like it might be yelling, it might even be, slapping on the bum or things like that, that you're like, you never thought you'd do and you don't want to do, but you're not sure what to do differently. You are in the right place. So who am I and why am I here today? I am a mom of two boys who are now ages 7 and 9, soon to be 8 and 10, and I co-parent with my husband, Gord. But this life of parent coaching is not what I was, as a child, dreamed of doing. Like you hear many educators and parent coaches like, this is what I always wanted to do with my life. I felt like I was doing really well in my corporate job. I was living and traveling around the world, building teams. I had my MBA that I did at Queen's here in Toronto while I was working in Mexico. My lifestyle was not conducive to children. And I never really dreamed of having children just because I didn't have the upbringing that I felt equipped me to be the parent I wanted to be. But then I met my now husband and we had children, and it felt like my worst, I'm going to take a deep breath because sometimes it's still hard. My worst dream, my prayers came true. I didn't know how to parent. I was angry. I was overwhelmed. I was resorting to threats and punishment, and none of it felt good. And I had to really, the moment where I was holding my little 2-year-old tighter than I thought I could, and he was yelling back at me, and I'm like, where did he learn this? I really had to learn the mirror. And that was a turning point for me, where I was fortunate to work with a parent coach who made the world of difference in our family. And as a result, it really made me realize that I'm not alone in these struggles. I'm not alone in feeling overwhelmed and angry and not knowing how to deal with things. And I found a different way. And so I want to help other parents. And that's what I do now after I've gotten my certification, is helping parents around the world find more calm, connection, and peace in their family. Because with awareness, change is possible. And so that is why I'm here today, and why I love doing what I'm doing, is seeing the results and the transformations in the family I work with. When I'm not doing that, I love the outdoors. We're a family that runs and skis, and my Achilles heel is my morning oat lattes. Now I'm sipping some tea. Hopefully you guys are having a beverage as well. I also love essential oils and traveling. I miss traveling, and hopefully that'll come back to normal soon. And building meaningful relationships is a big part of what I love in my day-to-day. So what are we going to cover today? Like I said, lots. First and foremost, how do we keep our calm? There's many moments in our parenting, and I can imagine that you can relate, where we lose it. So we're going to talk about some strategies on how to keep your calm when you're triggered. Number 2, we're going to look at, once we're regulated, how do we get our kids to listen? And finally, you are going to walk away with actionable strategies that you can practice today with your child. And I encourage you to stay to the end of this workshop, because there will be some surprises, especially for kids and co-families. So I want to start with an activity. I don't know, do people have their cameras on? I want to be able to see. Kelsey, are there? Can I see the participants with their cameras? Because I should have asked that.
No, we're in webinar format, so you can't see their faces.
Okay, so we're going to do this activity. I'm going to ask you guys to be honest in the chat afterwards. So let's get started. First of all, you can all see me. I'm raising my hand, and I'm asking if you could do this with me on our system, is put your index finger and your thumb together like you're making an okay sign. Making an okay sign. Now, put that okay sign on your chin. Hold it on your chin. And I would ask maybe, and I'm curious to put in the chat, how many of you were putting it on your chin? And how many of you were maybe holding it as I was doing versus saying on your cheek? No shame if someone did cheek versus chin, chin, cheek, already there, differences, right? So what does that make you realize? See, lots of differences. We're not 100% doing one thing, right? It's confusing. Some of you might be visual learners, and you are seeing what I'm doing. So I did this and you did this. And others of you might have been listening and hearing my words, and you actually did this. And we as adults, and I'll talk a little bit about brain science, but this is by no means a PhD in child psychology, but we as adults and we're all calm and regulated, I imagine right now, we're in our prefrontal cortex, higher brain, problem solving. So you're able to rationalize what I said versus what I did. Our kids are not there developmentally most of the time, and I'll talk a bit more about that. So just being aware of, are your actions and your words aligned? Right? Otherwise it causes confusion, and we are adults at this webinar. It will cause confusion within us. I also asked, do you notice when you're dysregulated, when you're either angry or frustrated, maybe yelling, do you notice a difference in your child's behavior? Are you both battling? You know, if they're storming, are you storming alongside of them? And a lot of times being able to regulate ourselves, you notice it in your body first. Like our body starts to tell us that we're starting to get dysregulated. For me, my heart is usually racing a little faster. I might be more constricted in my chest. And when we're dysregulated and we lose it, yeah, the power struggle is triggering, right? Why isn't this child listening to me? Oops, sorry, I skipped ahead. And so when we're dysregulated, it's harder for us to look at the situation that's in front of us rationally and approach it, salvaging the relationship versus resulting in disconnection. And it's normal because a lot of us, we're not taught this language of feelings and needs and going beneath. One thing I want you to remember is all behavior, whatever we're seeing in our child, all behavior is a message, and usually it's a message of an unmet need. So what is going on beneath that power struggle? What are they trying to achieve that might be trying to do in a negative way? And that's where the change really starts with us and getting our lid on. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Daniel Siegel, but he's one of my favorite authors. He talks about like the hand signal. I'm not going through it all, but your lid, if it's flipped, you know, in this boiling pot, you're no longer thinking rationally. And we cannot do our best parenting if we ourselves have flipped our lids. But there is good news, right? You'd be thinking, well, I don't know how to change. Every day, every moment that we are with our kids is an opportunity to choose a different path. As I mentioned before, we're skiers downhill, but I'll use a cross-country ski example that if you're going along, your default pattern is the ski tracks, right? If you keep going along the same path, and that path might be, you know, meeting your child in battle, you're pressing that snow down, it becoming packed, and it's easier to keep going on that path because it's smooth, it's packed, it flows quickly. What we are here to learn and do is to start taking a different path. And so that means going on into the unpacked snow. It might be deeper, it might be harder to ski in. But every time we are able to take that off ramp, if you will, we learn a new way. And because of the blessing of neuroplasticity, we form new neural pathways, and that's how you form new habits. So our kids don't come with an instruction manual, right? We're not meant to be perfect parents, but we always have an opportunity to practice a different way. And that's what I'm here to take you through, is how do we practice this different way to end the power struggles, to move to cooperation. So when I was talking to Chelsea, she was saying this was a really popular workshop. And I imagine, you know, when you heard the title, like getting kids to cooperate, it's like, yes, I want that. I want that. And these might be reasons you want it. And we want the best for our children, right? We have children and we have all these dreams, hopes, and visions for what parenting is like and what that child might be like. And we want the best. And we may also want, you know, more calm and peace in our own family, right? It's difficult to always feel like you're battling with your kids. And I know for me, I want to leave a legacy of peace and connection, cooperation. That baggage that I was dragging, I didn't want my kids to have to carry. I wanted them to have a different path to be able to walk from versus mine. And that's where we're going to start with, how do we hit our pause? So like I said, if you're noticing and becoming aware of where do you feel it in your body when you're starting to get dysregulated, my ask is you hit pause. And these are 3 strategies I'm going to talk through on how you can do that. The first one is breathing with a twist. And what that twist is, you know, always hear, take deep breaths. And I remember using this with my child before I have done a lot of this work. And he'd be like, I can't breathe. I just can't breathe. And that works sometimes with us too, right? If we're so worked up, accessing our breath is hard. So how do we do it with a twist? It might be counting to 10 backwards. It might be, English is my mother tongue, but I speak Italian, French, Spanish. So maybe it's counting to 10 in another language. And what that does is it makes you go into your more conscious brain versus being reactive and subconsciously acting on some of our triggers. Another strategy is moving your body. This might be as simple as, you're at the kitchen sink and you're going to do a few stretches, and that gets different blood flow going in your body and helps move the negative energy. It could be like doing some push-ups, and the kids are going to be watching this. And one that I find a lot of my clients and who I've done this workshop love is whispering, right? If your default is yelling and all of a sudden you're whispering, that results in a really change in your child, because they're like, what is going on? They may be like more likely to listen because like you're using a whispering tone. They're curious on what's going on. And it's really hard to be angry when you're whispering and using a soft tone. The third one, and right now, I don't know how many of you have noticed the popularity of cold plunges. Like it's been around for centuries, but using water really helps calm our nervous system. Cold water specifically. So this might be, as simple as taking a glass of water. Might be, going to a washroom and splashing some cold water on your face, or washing your hand under cold water. So I'd ask if you'd be willing to put in the chat, following this workshop, which one of these strategies would you be willing to go away and practice? Using the water, using the breath, using the counting, water. I already tried breathing. Yes, trying something different. And this is where, just like with our kids, finding ways to regulate ourselves, you're going to be trial and error, like works for you. So maybe Victoria, maybe it's like going and splash water. Maybe it's taking just a glass of water. It's just being more mindful and conscious of, we need to calm ourselves down when there's a situation in front of us. Okay, so it's fine if you don't want to write in the chat, but maybe you just even note it down for yourself. What are you willing to go away and practice to ensure, before we move to interacting with our child, that we have our higher brain function on? We haven't flipped our lid, or if we have, we've put it back on. So without connection, there's no cooperation. And I love Brené Brown's definition of connection. Connection, in her definition, is when someone feels seen, heard, and valued. And I know sometimes this goes so contrary to the way we were parented, where it might have been, you need to be seen and not heard, or you do as I say because I said so. And so the idea of, if someone doesn't cooperate, it might be because they're unwilling. And like I said, behavior is usually a message of something else going on, of an unmet need. And so the power struggles, a lot of times the unmet need might be autonomy. And especially for young kids, where, and I don't know if you've seen the blog I wrote for Kids & Co, that emotional backpack, is if they're going through most of their day being told what to do, they have little control. And so the power struggles a lot of times ensue because they are trying to exert their autonomy in ways you may not like. And that's where we're working strategies on how you can feed that need for autonomy while still moving towards cooperation. Another reason kids don't cooperate is a lagging skill, like they're unable, not unwilling. So this, keeping in mind that most of the kids that I looked at the ages in the chat, most of them, if we think about our higher brain, which is where impulse control, cooperation, being able to think rationally and problem solve, that's in our prefrontal cortex. That doesn't start coming online until age 7. Yes, age 7. So think about the ages of your kids, and isn't fully developed until the age of 25. And for many, I'm sure you know many adults where it's not developed because it's a practice and you need to build that pathway to be able to develop that muscle of cooperation. And so thinking about what's realistic for your child and shifting to, co-regulating instead of expecting them to self-regulate. I'm having a hard time getting rid of this box here. There we go. So this is the 4-step strategy that I want to walk you through, and then we're going to go through specific putting it into action. So the first step, and some of this might seem obvious, but I'm going to walk through examples and share some with my clients, is get their attention. And what does that mean? If you have seen in school sometimes, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. What is that? It's a pattern interrupter. And a lot of teachers use it because they're not going to start talking to a class full of unruly kids doing all the different things until everyone is looking, right? If you get eye contact, you're more likely to know that you have their attention. So you gain their attention. An example I'll use also, like I said, my 2 boys are 7 and 9. And so on weekends, they get to play some Minecraft. That's the activity that they love. And so when I have to let them know that it's almost time to get off, I sit in between them, right? They're sitting on the sofa, they're gaming, they're building. So I'm going to sit, I'm entering their world. And I'd be like, hey, what are you building? Why'd you put that block there? Showing interest, entering their world. If they're on the ground, like this mom on the ground playing with blocks, ask them a question about what they're doing. Boom. They love talking about what they love. You've gotten their attention. Then you move to step 2. You do not move to step 2 if you don't have their attention. And this was like this dad I was working with, he was always saying, I can't get my daughter to come up for bath. I'm always calling her to come up for bath. She's not listening. I get angry. I feel disrespected. He was calling her from upstairs and she was downstairs. A simple change that we made is go down. I know this might seem like it takes more time, but you end up leaving that relationship feeling better versus stressed and exhausted and yelling. So he went down and he notices she loves to draw and color. She's drawing and coloring. So he's like, oh, her name is Nina. He's like, Nina, what are you drawing? Why did you choose green for that dinosaur? He got her attention. So instead of yelling from upstairs, come up for bath, she's not listening, she's not moving, then you make your request, time to come up for bath. Or with my boys, you have 5 more minutes on Minecraft. What are you going to do with your next 5 minutes? And this could be the same with the playground, right? We're leaving the park in 5 minutes. What are you going to do next 5 minutes? Are you going to do 5 slides, or do you want me to push you on the swing 5 times? And then you want to confirm that they've heard and registered, just like our example of, was there a miscommunication? Did you think they were listening even though you got their attention? Okay, guys, what are you doing with the last 5 minutes? They might tell you, or the child picks, so you know they've made a choice. They're hearing you, they've processed it, they've understood. And the final step, and this was also a game changer in my own parenting, do you notice that maybe your expectation is when you want your child to, let's say, go up for bath, they might not love it. Transitions are hard. They're like, I don't want to go to bed. There might be some crying. There might be some feelings, or my kid's turning off Minecraft. They might be disappointed. They love it. What I teach is all feelings are okay. It's the behavior we want to correct. So making them feel like they shouldn't be disappointed, that they shouldn't be sad, that's invalidating them. And that's also telling them that the way they're feeling isn't right. And so how many of us have grown up not trusting ourselves because we were always told we shouldn't feel that way? And so what I go through, and we don't have to go through it here, is if they have a big emotion around, the request you're making, we walk through a peace process to move them through it so that your relationship is intact, but you're still holding that boundary of it's time to leave the park, it's time to go up for bath, or it's time to turn off the Minecraft. I'm going to keep moving because we'll have questions at the end, and I want to ensure we have time for questions, but I want to move into how do we put this into practice, these 4 steps. One of the ones that I find extremely valuable, especially in the power struggles, because a lot of times, and sometimes we have to dig deeper to see if that's the true need, a lot of times power struggles are the result of wanting autonomy. And so if they're continually demanded, do this, do that, they're going to resist because they feel they have no control. So it might be as simple as, I see Maddie, what's the peace process? The peace process is a process that I teach clients when their child is having a big emotion like sadness, like disappointment, like anger. How do you move them through it to regulation? We don't go through it in this workshop. We can definitely do a subsequent workshop, but that's what that is. So I don't go through it in detail here. So the choice is, I need your help, for example. Do you want to do your chores now or in 30 minutes? And so the chores are going to get done, but you're giving them a choice of now or in 30 minutes. Another one might be, again, maybe you have battles in the morning getting them dressed, and it's like, okay, do you want to wear this pink shirt or do you want to wear this green shirt? They're putting on a shirt, but you're giving them an option, this one or this one. It's not a whole drawer full. And the way this one evolves as they get older and they have more ability to problem solve is you might leave it open-ended. Like my 9-year-old now, we problem solve together. So we're like, okay, he wants to walk to school. Be like, how early should you leave? How long does it take you to walk? I'm not going to tell him you have to leave now. I want him to figure that out on his own, but he's older to be able to come up with that. But when they're younger, give 2 choices and not like a whole menu. Because like when you go to a restaurant, you have too many choices. You're like, oh, I don't know, there's too many. Limit it to 2. And so this is one of the key strategies that will end a lot of the power struggles. Another strategy, like I said, a lot of times it might be unwilling. So they need more information. A lot of times we focus on what not to do, but they need to understand what they should do instead. So for example, don't scream. It doesn't actually tell them what to do. So instead saying, that sound is hurting my ears. Can you lower your voice, please? So these are ways, and even an example the other day with my son, who, full transparency, is neurodiverse, he has ADHD, some learning differences for him. He has a high need to be able to understand. If he doesn't understand, it's harder for him to move forward and cooperate. And yes, sometimes it is what it is, and you can't go into detailed explanation, but sometimes you can. It's an opportunity to teach and to inform. And then once they understand, they're more likely to be comfortable moving forward. Another strategy, and this is a wonderful one, that sometimes it might feel hard to access, especially when we're stressed, but notice if you're able to access it, it reduces not only your stress, but gets cooperation. And I take a lot of examples from this book by Lawrence Cohen, Playful Parenting. And it's the idea of kids are wired for fun, right? Who wants to stop playing and doing fun? But so if you enter that world and get them to move along in a playful way, it'll go smoother. And this could look different depending on your parenting style. Like for example, no gender stereotypes here, but like some dads love wrestling. And that is a great way to let the kids let that energy out and release. Another thing for me is like I do pillow fighting instead because I'm not comfortable with the wrestling. But it's a great way to connect and being able to move them along. Let's say you're trying to get out the door, using play instead of, a demand. Instead of stop moving, I got to put your shoes on, we have to go to daycare. It might be, and they're running around rampant, going crazy. Let's move like a bird. Then can you be a statue? And when they're a statue, you're going to get their shoes on. And this might all seem like it's so much more work. And sometimes, yes, parenting in this way isn't always the easy way, but parenting in this way is meant to establish a relationship of connection. And if there's connection, there will be cooperation. And isn't it more fun to get through your day doing it this way than feeling like you're battling? And so there's this mom that I worked with. She had this high need for her house to be super clean. And I can totally relate to that. I don't like disorder and mess. And she has 5 and 3-year-old boys that were fighting all the time. And through working together, we unpeeled this onion of her high need for order. And there was one Saturday morning where her boys had spilt all the oatmeal all over the floor. And normally that would have been so triggering for her, seeing that mess and them playing in it. But instead, she remembered the work that we did together. And she's like, look at these 2 boys that normally fight. They're now on the floor and they were taking the oatmeal flakes and like blowing them and having fun. So what did she do? She got on the floor with them and she played with them. Then she held the limit. It's like, okay, guys, now we got to clean up this mess. And they worked together. One of them got the pail, one of them got the dustpan, whatever it was, and they cleaned it up together. And so they left that situation feeling connected. Instead of her in the past, she would have like, get out of the kitchen, you've made a mess, leave, you can't do anything. And that would leave it not a good relationship, and you're not feeling good afterwards. So these are ways to kind of shift our default patterns and just becoming aware of some other options that you can choose and choose that off ramp. The reason I also share success stories, for me, when I hear success stories, it gives me hope and not feeling alone, where I'm not the only one struggling and I can find a different way. I work with this mom, Chloe, who she's a single mom with 2 girls. And she came to me just feeling like, I'm exhausted. I feel guilty as a single mom. I'm trying to do everything for my kids, and it just seems like never enough. And so working together, she learned some really valuable tools and was able to decode her kids' behavior and understand the language of feelings and needs. And so working together, she was able to set limits and boundaries. And there's a lot less rivalry in her home, and it was more peaceful. And she is now actually engaged to be married, and her life has really transformed in working together. And so change is possible with awareness and support. I want to do a quick stretch break. How are we on time? I'm going to share a link in the chat. If you'd be willing to do a 2-minute quiz, it will give us a sense of, where are we with parenting styles? And then I'm going to share a strategy for each parenting style on something to focus on. So I've put the link in the chat. If you can go click on the link, take the quiz, and then drop in the chat what your parenting style is. And then I will share a key tip for that parenting style. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that as I take a sip of my water, and I'll check some of the questions. I'll know when some of you are done when I start seeing some answers in the chat. Again, no shame, no guilt. Doesn't matter what your parenting style comes up at. It's again accepting, where we're at, and I will share on what is something you can focus on from there. Sometimes it's knowing like, what's the first step? What do I do? I don't know where to start. maybe just one more minute to see if I've done it. If not, I'll skip through this and we'll keep going. Balance controller. Okay, so we got a mix of answers. And so I'm going to go through each one because I thought maybe I would skip some, but let's touch on each one quickly. Okay, so the controller, right? And this is full transparency. This is how I was raised. Like my parents were really controlling, and the idea was, you know, you do as I say because I said so. And so here, one of the things that you can focus on, if this is your style of parenting, is getting used to your kids having a voice, you know, getting used to talking about feelings and needs and going beneath that behavior to understand what that might be going on. Focus on empathizing and validating. You know, an example, just the other day, my son was upset that, you know, my husband told him he couldn't go to the corner store and get a sugar-free lemonade. He was upset about that. You know, when you could easily say, well, that's no big deal, like, get over it, we're done, versus, yeah, buddy, like, I get it, you love sugar-free lemonade, right? And that's it. You just have to validate and then zip it. So maybe that's one thing that you can focus on as controller, is putting words to how they're feeling and normalizing it. As I think there was an aloof parent, this might be, are you able to, and again, no judgment, put the phone away, no distractions, and do some one-on-one time with each child. And this feels their need for attention. You know, sometimes when you have, especially more than one child, and they're always asking for attention, they might try and get attention in negative behavior. And so this is a practice we do in our home regularly. And now my 7-year-old asked for it. Like the other day, he's like, Mom, can we do some one-on-one time? And they love this because, one, no distractions, you put your phone away, there's no TV on, it's no device time. They get to pick the activity, so it feels like their need for autonomy and control, and they love having your undivided attention. So notice when you're doing that, how you're feeling and how you're connecting with them, and notice sometimes that the ripple effect of benefits once they've done that with you. For the hippie parent, maybe this is where, like, you feel like you give into a lot of needs and limits. And this is where it's getting comfortable with setting clear limits and boundaries. And maybe it's starting small with one change. Is it being more consistent with your screen time limits? Is it more consistent with, you know, the bedtime and the bedtime routine? And getting comfortable when they might not be happy about it, but pick one thing that you find is the biggest struggle in your home right now and put some consistent limits around it. And the balanced parent. The balanced parent, a lot of times, like I said, this style of parenting can feel like it takes more time and effort. And sometimes it sure does, especially at the beginning. So taking care of yourself, that's just a reminder that I need to move through this. Taking a reminder to take care of yourself, right? If our needs are not met, we're going to be more reactive to our kids. So ensuring our cup is full. You know, you often hear, and, you know, when you travel, you know, I don't know how many of us are traveling that much, but put your oxygen mask on first. It's the same idea. So ensuring you're prioritizing your self-care. What do you need to feel content and happy so that you can show up and be fully present and deal with the situation in front of you? I know when I was working insane hours and I was exhausted and I had no time to myself, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating right, I wasn't exercising, I had a short fuse. And no matter what was going on, that wouldn't change until I found giving myself grace to take a minute and take some time for myself. And it could be small. I get sometimes you're like, I don't have time. It might be as, you know, 5 extra minutes longer in the shower, doing some calming breathing, listening to your favorite music for a few minutes, whatever it is that makes you feel more centered to show up in a different way. So I hope those strategies are helpful now that you know which parenting style you are and one thing to focus. And I want to jump back into a few more strategies. So I remember the no, right? If your child is always saying no, they might also be hearing no, no, no all the time. So being mindful of, are you saying no often. Because when a child hears no, in their mind, it might be, again, getting ready for battle. They said, no, I got to exert my own independence in person. I'm going to fight. Or it might be, no, I'm never going to get what I want. And it's like a big deal versus you might mean not now. So I have a blog on this that you can check on my website, yourtransformedfamily.com, where it's 15 ways to say no without saying no. But one example here is, a child wants a cookie and it might, you might be ready to put dinner on the table. And so what you can say is, of course, you can have a cookie when we're finished dinner, and choose which one you want. You can also give it to them in a wish, right? If they're asking for something and it's not possible, I wish I can give you a trip to Disney, right? Like, what would you do there? And like move to that visualization of what it would feel like, right? And sometimes even for yourself, like, yeah, we all want different things that we can't always have, but you might visualize what it's like to have it, and that fulfills that need without even having to get it. So thinking about ways that you can avoid that battle by avoiding the word no. Another strategy is problem solving. And like I said, this looks different as your child gets older, but it's identifying if they have either an unmet need or a lagging skill and working together to find a solution. So an example was this 5 and 3-year-old that was always sleeping with the mom, and mom was fine with it for a while. And then she's realizing, I'm not getting any sleep. This has to stop. And so she wanted to move her 5-year-old to her own room. And so we worked on a plan to do that. And the child was able to choose what color they wanted. They were painting the room, what color they're painting the room, what duvet they wanted to pick. So they had a lot of choice, and they got excited about getting their own room. So the transition went well. And so she was super excited. Transition went well. But like a lot of transition, like it might go well at first, and then a few days later, you're like, oh, she keeps coming in my bed. But what this mom did is she realized that was a big shift, where the daughter was used to always sleeping with the mom, and that was their connection time and cuddling time. And they didn't factor in, how do I fill my child up with that need now that she's not getting it at bedtime? So they made a change in their routine after school and the things that they were doing, like the one-on-one time, that made it easier for her to separate at the end of the day. And that's where, if you think about it as an iceberg, it's always like, this is the behavior, maybe like they're resisting bedtime, but what's going on underneath that you can do to help move them along. And finally, it's modeling, right? And we started with this, with keeping our own calm, but being aware of, when we talk with the clients that I work with, a lot of times we talk about what are the qualities that you want your child to have as an adult, and are you embodying them today? And if not, like, again, it's just being aware and taking steps to make changes to do that, because kids are watching. And so in the example we started with, what are they seeing versus what are you doing? And so if you walk past someone in distress, they might learn that someone else's pain isn't our concern. If the idea of, they're feeling controlled and you're always telling them what to do, you might notice if you have siblings or someone younger in the home, or they might try and exert their power over that person because that's what they're seeing. And they're like, well, they can't power over me. They're younger. I'm going to use that same strategy because that's what they're seeing. But if you grow up around love, fairness, and compassion, that is more likely what you are also going to do. Not all the time, right? We're not perfect. There's going to be moments where we're not feeling like we want to share our toy. But when we model it respectfully and we let their voice be heard, they're more likely to also listen to our voice. I wanted to share Basil's story before we wrap up, and I'll summarize and take time for questions. But this dad came to me where he was always in a state of rage. And after just 2 weeks working together, the house became, in his words, a very peaceful place, in spite of his wife and him getting busier with work. He learned to reflect hard on his own behavior with Nina, and a lot of the negativity was based on how he was treated in his early childhood with his parents. Having a peaceful home is a blessing. I can't thank Jenn enough for the guidance. This is a man that went from rage to feeling connected, not only to his children, but to his wife, because it was causing a lot of friction when he would go in this state of rage. And so all the tips that I shared with you today, it's about practice, right? They might seem easy and doable. And I heard one mom say with the whispering, yeah, I know, and it works, but I forget. put Post-it notes, right? There's a time, and when I'm doing something new, and I can't show you my wall right now, there's Post-it notes everywhere, right? It's having it front center. Put a reminder on your phone. We have to set ourselves up for success. What do we do to remember these new strategies when we're focusing on practicing them? And that is why I also want to give you an opportunity to learn a bit more about the course I take you through, because in this 90-day, you feel like you have me by your side, and you practice these tools with support and commitment from me on a weekly basis. And it's broken up into 3 phases. The first phase, we start with decoding ourselves. So that's going into what is setting us off? What is that message? How do we change that story? And how do we practice taking that pause so we can make a different choice? And then we move on to understanding our child. What's going on with them? It's not a PhD in child psychology, but we focus on the core needs that our kids have, and how do we decode their negative behavior and turn it into language of feelings and needs. And I arm you with the toolkit, a lot of the ones I shared today, but we go into more detail and we practice a lot more on how to set limits and boundaries that are aligned to your family values. And ultimately, like I said, it's setting yourself up for success for the rest of your parenting journey. Is what are the goals and vision that you have for your family, for your children as adults, and how do you pave the way to get there? So you're not meant to do this alone. I offer the support, and as a Kids & Co member and attendee to this webinar, you have 2 time limit offers that I wanted to share with you, and I will put the link in the chat in a minute. I have a free call available to everyone, but what I'm offering to you for attending here is a free 40-minute where you can come to me with one parenting challenge, and we are going to go through how to overcome it and strategies you can take to deal with it. So there's 4 of those available. I'll paste the link in the chat so you can go ahead and book one of those at your earliest convenience. And then what I also have is a 20% discount on my Break the Cycle program if you sign up by March 31st. So that book a call with me either through the 40-minute one or the one that's on my website at yourtransformedfamily.com. And if you're ready to sign up before March 31st, you'll get a 20% discount. So let me just go through what we covered today, because I know it was a lot. So I just want you to make sure you have some reminders and takeaways. Is 1, keeping our calm. So write down what you committed to, whether that was the breathing with a twist, whether that was moving your body or using water. Write it down, post it up as a reminder. It could be a trigger on your phone, wherever you're going to constantly be looking at it, because when we're trying to change our patterns, we need that reminder, right? And the more we do it, the easier it becomes. And then 6 strategies for cooperation. We talked about choice. That removes a lot of power struggles. Give them a choice of 2 things, especially if they're under 7 or 8 years old. If you feel your child is able to handle a discussion where you talk about how to solve the problem with more options, that's fine. But if not, most of the time with the kids in this group that I saw, it just offered 2 things. And sometimes it's a matter of providing more information, right? Short, simple words for young kids. Play is a huge and a big umbrella. Like I said in my course, we spend a whole week and a whole module on play, but being able to act this more fun, it's fun for you, and it gets the kids to reduce their barrier to resistance. And then also yes instead of no. So you can check out the blog on my website on 15 ways to do this, but being mindful of, are you saying no too often when you can find a different way to say it? Because no is very triggering for young kids who want to exert autonomy. Problem solving together, what's going on, that you can find solutions together that they could develop that prefrontal cortex. And finally, modeling. Your self-care, your regulation. If you find ways to regulate yourself with, one of those 3 tips, the kids are seeing that, and they will start to do it too in time, right? This is building new ways that kids also need time to get used to the new way. And finally, I shared a tip depending on your parenting style where you can move away with more confidence. And I will open it up for questions, and you can find me, if we don't have time to answer your question, you can find me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Your Transformed Family. If you completed the quiz, you'll also be subscribed to my newsletter and you can email me with questions, but I'm always available. But now I'll open it up for any questions that you might have on what we discussed today.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was really amazing and informative. Yeah, so everyone, if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat. And as I just wrote in the chat, we'll be sending out a recording of this session, which will include all of the links to Jen's socials, websites, and the amazing offers that she provided us. So if you didn't have time to take the notes down, we will definitely share those with you so you can take advantage.
I know there were some that were coming through before. I don't know if I answered them.
Yeah, so the ones that haven't been through before, I think were more so comments regarding the methods. Okay, we have one here from, tips for throwing food. Oh, sorry. Tips for throwing food, already giving choices, but only 2.5 years old, so he's limited.
Okay, great one. And this strategy that I'll share is for throwing food. It could also be for hitting, but if they're throwing food, first and foremost, be like, I can't let you do that. A lot of times we're really vague with our language. I can't let you throw the food. And if she continues to throw it or he continues to throw it more than once, it seems like you need help and you might have to take away. We'll try this again later. So if it's on the food tray or whatever, you take it away. Kids are not going to starve. Sometimes we feel like I can't take away the food, like they're so hungry. There will be an opportunity to eat again. But sometimes if they continue to do it, that's where you set the limit and boundary. You tell them they can't do it. If they continue to do it, then take the food away and try again another time. Is that helpful, Lara? Sorry, I might be saying that differently.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another one here. Any examples of play for getting a toddler into a car seat?
Yeah, car seats sometimes are a struggle where they don't want to, right? So it's like, yes, this is where you can use, and this is you can use your own creativity, but like I use like the different, you can fly like a bird, whatever. So it's like their arms up, however they need to get in, do motions. So yeah, you can make them turn into different animals to get in. But ultimately, like I said, sometimes they may not want to. And all you can do is validate, I know this doesn't feel good for you. I need to keep you safe. We need to be in the car seat. So you might have to buckle them in and they might refrain, but like having them be different creatures to get their arm in, or, oh, can you touch your head here? Whatever motion, your energy, if your energy is more playful and fun, it'll go smoother. But at the end of the day, if they're still resisting, it's still your job to get them in there. But being in a calm place and doing it in a calm place versus being angry, forcefully putting them in is very different. And so you'll notice a shift in your energy.
Great. Okay, do you have any recommendations for biting for a 17-month-old? He doesn't seem to care that it hurts mommy.
Yeah, again, similar example with the food. It's like, ouch, that hurts. I can't let you do it. And moving them away. You don't have to make them feel sorry for it or bad or guilty. It's like, I can't let you do that. Mommy's going to keep herself safe and I'm going to go over here while you play there. So it's always just letting them know that that's a limit, can't let you do it, and moving away so that you're safe. And maybe it's giving them something else that they can bite on and chew. Because if it's at that age and they might be teething, you know, I have a puppy now and it's like, oh, he's chewing all kinds of things. Like, do you have things that they can chew that is acceptable? So it's like, do you want to chew on this again? Because they have that need for chewing. What can you give as an alternative that is okay?
Okay, makes sense. Do you have any other examples for other ways to say no?
Yeah, well, like I said, check out my blog on yourtransformedfamily.com. There is 15 different ways to say no without saying no. So I trust you'd find that really helpful. So check it out there. That'd be a great resource.
Perfect. You can send a link to that as well in the follow-up email.
Yeah.
Any ideas to help with struggles dropping off at daycare? She used to love it. Now she doesn't want to go in.
Yeah, that a lot of times separation is hard, right? Separation hard. Being able to role play and model this sometimes at home in different ways, depending what they like. Like if they have, like with kids, they might have dolls or trucks, toys, different figurines. You can model it. Either you be the child and they be the parent, and you model like going away and separating, or you can also practice doing small separations at home, right? If she has a hard time with separation in general, you might want to, you know, you're going to the other room and she's on her own, But when those are things you can do more preventatively, like model it through play and how she deals with the feelings. And then at the daycare, I gotta go, right? What ways that would be supportive? And I don't know if they're allowed having like a lovey or something that they want to hold on to that feels safe. My kids had this necklace with a stone that they liked, and they put it inside, and that helped them keep them safe. But again, it's holding the limits. Like, I get it, it's hard. Mommy's gonna miss you too. And you might want to say, what do you want to do when I pick you up from daycare? And maybe you have the opportunity to stop at a park. Do you want to stop at this park, or do you want to maybe pick two things that she can focus on when she picks them up? So validate the emotion and maybe focus on what they want to do at pickup.
Wonderful. So we kind of touched on this first part. Any suggestions for hitting? But the second part, what if they say a bad word? How do you say it's not good?
Yeah. Sometimes we are more triggered by the bad words, and they're just kind of seeing if they get a reaction out of us, again, they're more likely to want to do it because the reaction is kind of what intrigues them. And so when my kids used to say bad words, they were kind of trying it out. And sometimes the best strategy is to ignore it. And if it happens repeatedly, you might want to say, what's a different way we can say that? Are you trying to say X?
Mm-hmm.
So trying not to focus too much on the word, either ignore it, or if it happens repeatedly, give them another way to express what they're trying to say. But most importantly, trying not to make a big deal of it, because that reaction is sometimes what they're craving.
Okay. Giving a 2.5-year-old choice between 2 items of clothing, and her answer is neither. I explain a naked baby is not allowed at school, and she runs away. Help.
Yeah, right. And this is where holding that boundary sometimes can be hard. It's like, yeah, I get it. Clothing doesn't feel good, but we can't go to school with no clothes. Do you need my help putting on this pink one? And then you might have to help them. And again, it's always, are you calm and regulated when we're doing this? Resourceful. So sometimes, yes, you have to hold them and put it on and still validate. I get it. For some reason, clothing doesn't feel good for you today, but we can't go to school without it.
Okay. Any suggestions with jealousy and playing rough with a younger sibling?
Yeah, so jealousy, a lot of times, and I'm generalizing here because we'd have to dig in deeper on what's going on. A lot of times, jealousy is kids feel that our attention might be limited and finite. And so using special time more regularly and ensuring that both siblings feel like they matter, and that sometimes when a younger sibling comes into play, you'll see some regression because they're like, well, that younger sibling is crying and getting attention and getting a lot more attention, so I'm going to cry and try and do the same thing, when the need is actually attention. So how can you proactively fill that through one-on-one time? And then it might be with the roughhousing play, you need to set a limit and you need to show them, because a lot of times they don't know, so we assume that they know how to play. It's like, okay, instead of that, how can you play? And if they're having a hard time with it, you might have to break it up and saying, it seems like maybe we should do something independently. Recognizing the lagging skills, because a lot of times we have expectations that are too high for what they're able to handle.
Okay, last question here. My 4-year-old goes to sleep in her bed, but it's always during the night comes to our bed. Suggestions to help her not do that and sleep through the night.
So sleep is a big thing. And obviously that I'm not a sleep expert, but as I shared the example with the client that we moved into their own room, it's talking about, what's going on. Like, and this happens sometimes with my 7-year-old too, where he used to share a room with his older brother. And now that he's on his own, he had a harder time saying, I want you to lie down with me, and doesn't want to go to sleep alone. So it was feeling like he was that separation of being alone was hard. So what we worked on is like, what do you need to feel safe and secure? And so we read the stories together. Then he has some loveys and stuffies, and then he's picked like the night lights he has. And it might be like, start small, where it's like, mommy will be back in 5 minutes. So they know you're coming back and you check in on them. Because sometimes it's just feeling that separation is hard. That is a much deeper topic to go into. But talking to them about what would help them, and having them come up with some ideas too.
Okay, we actually have another question in the Q&A. A 7-year-old boy is not cooperating. Could you give some alternatives too if you don't want to do this or you have to do that?
Sorry, say that, if you don't want to do that.
Can you give alternatives too? If you don't do this, you won't have to do this or that.
I'm not sure I'm understanding that, but okay, I'll try and answer it the way I think I'm hearing it. But yeah, so if you give, I'm hearing is if you give two choices and maybe they don't pick either of them, what do you do? I also love the example of using when, then. It might sound like punishment or consequence. That's why I don't like the if then, but it's like when you put your clothes away or when you make your bed, then we can read a story. Or if it's around screen time, which might be for a kid, like when you're finished doing XYZ, then you can have the screen time. So it's understanding, just like in life, sometimes there's an order that things need to be done. And so using when then might be an example and a strategy that would be helpful.
Wonderful. I think that's all the questions that we have. And thank you so much. That was really, really amazing. And everyone, you should look in your inbox for a follow-up email that we'll send over the next few days. That'll include the recording, all of the resources that were shared today, and the full recording of the session in case you want to watch some sessions, aspects of it in more depth.
Well, awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with everyone here. And thanks for having me, Chelsea. It's been
Thank you. And thank you to all of our participants. It was really amazing.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.